Lily's scream tore through the cul-de-sac like a siren from hell, raw and inhuman, as Reed Simmons ground the burning end of his cigarette into her eye without flinching. Mark dropped everything and charged, fists flying, while Denise cradled their blistered daughter, blood mixing with chalk dust on the driveway. By the time the neighbors swarmed and Jimmy Hart shattered a man's kneecap with a bat, it was already too late. Innocence had been set on fire. It was the kind of Saturday that felt like it had been pulled from a postcard, cool air, the scent of freshly mowed grass still lingering, birds chirping like a well-rehearsed quartet. The kind of morning where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Lily Morgan, 8 years old and determined, sat cross-legged at the edge of her family's driveway, surrounded by scattered pieces of chalk. Her brown curls bounced every time she leaned over, tongue peeking out the corner of her mouth as she carefully shaded in the horn of a rainbow-colored unicorn. She clutched Mr. Whiskers, her raggedy white stuffed bunny, in the crook of her arm like a silent cheerleader for her artwork. Her green eyes sparkled under the soft spring sun. A butterfly flitted past, and Lily smiled, whispering something to it like they were old friends. A few feet away, her mom Denise was deadheading the hydrangeas along the porch, wearing her wide-brimmed sun hat and humming along with the radio playing from inside the kitchen. Her dad Mark was bent over the lawnmower in the garage, trying to figure out why it had been sputtering the past 2 weekends. It was, by all accounts, the kind of morning you don't forget because it's peaceful, boring, and perfect. Until it wasn't. The hum of tires on pavement didn't register at first. But then it came, slow, deliberate, wrong. A black SUV turned the corner into the cul-de-sac, creeping like a shadow with no source. It was shiny but worn, no plates, windows tinted dark enough to look like mirrors. It didn't belong. Mark noticed first. He stood, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag, narrowing his eyes. "That's odd," he muttered. The SUV rolled to a stop directly in front of their house. The engine stayed on. The doors opened. 2 men stepped out. The first was massive with bald, wide shoulders, thick neck like a wrestler. His polo shirt was tight across the chest, and stenciled crookedly in peeling iron-on letters were 3 bold initials, HOA. The other man was shorter, thinner, constantly twitching like he had caffeine running through his veins. A cigarette hung from the corner of his mouth, a clipboard in his hand, mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes. The 2 walked toward the driveway like they owned it. Mark stepped forward. "Can I help you?" The bald man didn't answer. He scanned the yard, then pointed at Lily. "Whose kid is this?" Denise stood, pruning shears in hand. "Ours." "What's going on?" The twitchy man stepped in. "She's in violation. HOA Regulation 12.4c, no chalk drawings on shared community concrete." Mark's brows furrowed. "What the hell are you talking about? This is our property. Our driveway. And we don't even have an HOA." The twitchy man smirked, pulled out a crumpled, coffee-stained piece of paper. "Emergency HOA ordinance, enacted yesterday. You were notified." "Not by anyone legitimate," Denise shot back. "I'm notifying you now," the man said, and his tone had the lazy malice of someone used to scaring people into silence. Mark stepped forward, chest rising. "You're not law enforcement. You're not even real." That's when the twitchy one flicked the cigarette from his mouth and didn't let it drop. He took a long drag, exhaled, and then began walking, strutting, toward Lily. "Hey!" Mark shouted. "Get away from my daughter." But the man didn't stop. He crouched next to Lily, who looked up, confused but not yet scared. Mr. Whiskers clutched tightly to her chest, chalk still in her other hand. "Nice drawing," the man muttered. "Too bad it's illegal." "I'm just drawing a unicorn," Lily said quietly. "Mommy said I could." "She's got attitude," the man said, turning his head to smirk at Denise. "That's another violation." Denise started walking fast now, gardening gloves off, hands shaking. "She's a child. Get away from her." The man relit his cigarette. For a half second, he just stared. Then, with a movement so fast it broke reality, he pressed the burning end into the soft flesh near Lily's eye. Her scream was instant. High-pitched. Animal. The sound cut through the street like a razor. Denise dropped the pruning shears and collapsed beside her daughter, sobbing, shielding her. Mark froze, but only for a second. Then rage took over. He hurled the grease rag into the bald man's face and charged the twitchy one. The man tried to dodge, but Mark slammed into him with full force. The clipboard flew. The cigarette dropped. Fists flew. Mark didn't think. He just swung. The man's glasses shattered. Blood splattered. Knuckles tore flesh. Meanwhile, the bald one lunged toward Mark's back, only to be intercepted by Jimmy Hart, their 68-year-old neighbor and a Vietnam vet who'd been watching everything from his porch. Jimmy didn't say a word. He just raised his Louisville Slugger and brought it down on the bald man's knee with a sickening crack. The man dropped, screaming. Phones were out now. Neighbors recording. People shouting. Call 911. They hurt that little girl. They're not real cops. Denise screamed for help. She's burned. Her face is, please. We need ice. A neighbor, Marcy, ran to get towels and ice packs. Lily was shaking violently, her cheek blistering. Mr. Whisker's ear was scorched black where the cigarette had nicked it. Mark wrestled the twitchy man down, used the garden hose to tie his hands behind his back. Jimmy stood over the bald one, bat still in hand, daring him to move. The whole street was watching now, silent but tense. It was no longer just about HOA nonsense. It was about a line being crossed, a child hurt. When the EMTs arrived, flashing lights threw red and blue across the unicorn chalk drawing, still half finished. Paramedics scooped Lily into their arms. Her breathing was erratic. Her eyes unfocused. Denise followed them into the ambulance, clutching Mr. Whiskers in one hand and her daughter's trembling fingers in the other. Mark stood in the driveway, fists bruised, shirt bloodied, chest heaving. Jimmy put a hand on his shoulder. You did right, he said simply. The paramedic looked back once before the doors shut. She's a fighter, he said. We've got her. And then they were gone. The driveway was quiet again, but the silence was different now. Charged. The unicorn was still there, part of it. But the driveway wasn't just concrete anymore. It had become a battlefield. And the war had just begun. The sirens faded into the distance as the ambulance carrying Lily disappeared around the corner, and for a long moment, the cul-de-sac stood suspended in a strange, heavy silence. The driveway, once a canvas for childhood wonder, now felt like the front lines of a war no one had expected to fight. Mark stood in the middle of it, chest heaving, blood drying on his knuckles, the scent of smoke and sweat clinging to his skin. The shattered chalk lay scattered like remnants of innocence torn apart. Jimmy Hart, gripping his cane with one hand and his bat with the other, watched the two restrained men on the pavement with a soldier's stillness, as if waiting for one of them to twitch so he could swing again. The bald one, Dennis, was whimpering through clenched teeth, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Reed, the twitchy one, was bleeding from the mouth, hands zip-tied with a garden hose, head twitching like his body was still trying to assert some kind of control. Mark looked down at him. You're lucky I stopped when I did. Reed didn't reply. But the fear in his eyes said more than words ever could. It wasn't just pain. It was realization. The masks they wore, cheap shirts, fake authority, smug entitlement, had been ripped off, and now the entire block had seen what was underneath, cowards in costume. When the real police finally arrived, 3 cruisers, followed closely by a supervisor's SUV, they were met not with chaos, but a calm that buzzed with purpose. Cameras were still rolling. Phones were out. Neighbors had gathered in clusters, protective, unified. One officer, a woman with cropped hair and a no-nonsense walk, knelt beside Reed and asked a single question, name. Reed Simmons, he mumbled. You got ID? He hesitated. I have a card in my wallet. It was fake. The officer's expression didn't change as she flipped it open. This badge number doesn't exist. Neither does your department. Another officer approached Dennis and found a similarly bogus ID along with a second forged ordinance, this one dated 3 days earlier than Reed's. You two have been busy, he muttered. Reed tried again. We were just issuing warnings. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. Mark stepped forward. He burned my daughter's face with a cigarette. The female officer turned her gaze back to Reed. That true? Silence. That's what I thought. The officers read them their rights on the spot, cuffing them properly, replacing the garden hose restraints with real ones. A low murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Mark's hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. It was over. Or so he thought. It wasn't. It was just beginning. The body cam footage, the neighbor videos, the 911 call recordings, all of it hit social media within hours. And the story spread like wildfire. The hashtags #ProtectLily and #FakeHOAJustice trended by nightfall. News vans parked at the end of the street. Helicopters hovered briefly the next morning. People from across the country saw the video, saw Lily's bloodied face, Denise's trembling scream, the two men laid out like broken toys, and they wanted answers. Then came the bombshell. Police discovered the SUV used by Reed and Dennis was registered under a shell company. A storage unit rented in Dennis Cole's name turned up dozens of forged HOA documents, over 30 phony ID cards with different names and cities, and a binder filled with handwritten notes, addresses, fake violation codes, amounts paid. Over 70 entries. Most victims had paid between $200 and $1,000 to avoid confrontation, fines, or supposed legal trouble. And nearly all of them fit the same pattern: elderly homeowners, immigrant families, single parents. People with enough to lose and not enough resources to push back. It wasn't just a scam. It was a racket. One that had slipped under the radar because no one ever reported it. Until Lily. At a press conference 2 days later, the police chief confirmed charges: impersonating law enforcement, assault on a minor, criminal conspiracy, racketeering, and intent to inflict permanent injury. More were expected. That night, Denise returned to the driveway. The unicorn Lily had drawn was still faintly visible, faded by the EMT's boots and the water used to clean up the blood. Denise knelt where her daughter had been and, with trembling hands, picked up a pink piece of chalk. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she wrote, in bold, shaky letters across the pavement, "No one harms my child," and walks away. The image went viral again. Within 24 hours, that single sentence became a rallying cry. Local artists recreated it on posters. Protesters carried it outside the courthouse. A mural was commissioned downtown. But it wasn't just the outrage that grew. It was the testimony. Calls flooded into the police tip line. Victims from 5 other states described the same scam, some even recognizing the men from the videos. One woman in Arizona had paid $600 in cash after Reed claimed her front yard flamingos violated visual balance standards. A Korean War vet in Georgia had been told his American flag needed to be removed or he'd be fined. A single mother in Nevada had broken down sobbing in her driveway after they threatened to report her unlicensed home daycare for chalk drawings her kids had made. Lily's case became the match that lit every buried injustice. At the preliminary hearing, reporters packed the hallway, national news crews shoulder to shoulder. Mark and Denise arrived together, holding hands. Mark wore a simple suit. Denise carried Lily's drawing, redrawn by her in the hospital. It wasn't a unicorn anymore. It was a fierce version of the same creature, with flames rising around it and narrowed eyes that didn't look scared, but defiant. Across the bottom, in Lily's handwriting, "No more monsters." The judge allowed it to be displayed during the victim impact statement. The defense lawyers tried to argue it was irrelevant. The judge overruled. She was drawing this when she was attacked. That makes it more relevant than anything else here. The courtroom was silent as Mark described the moment his daughter screamed. Denise's voice cracked as she recounted Lily asking, through tears, if she'd done something wrong. She thought she got hurt because she broke a rule, Denise said. She thought her drawing made her deserve it. No one in that room could look away. When the charges were read, both Dennis and Reed looked smaller, almost skeletal. The smugness was gone. So was the twitchiness. Reed cried. Dennis stared blankly at the floor. The judge didn't hesitate. Bail was denied. The official trial was scheduled for the following month. But the sentence had already been delivered in the court of public opinion. Outside, people lined the courthouse steps with signs and stuffed animals. Veterans in full uniform stood at salute. Kids waved chalk drawings of unicorns, lions, and fire. And at the very front, in bold purple paint on the sidewalk, someone had written in giant letters, "Lily's name means strength." That night, as the Morgans returned home, the mayor called. The city was declaring a new day on the calendar, Lily Morgan Day, to commemorate not just the crime, but the strength of the community's response. Denise accepted with grace. Mark didn't speak much. He just held his daughter's drawing close to his chest, eyes wet. That same evening, Denise stood once more on the driveway and touched the words she'd written days before. They had faded slightly. So she retraced them. Then she turned to Mark. "We can't let this be the end." "It won't be," he said. "It's just chapter 2. They said it would take time for the neighborhood to return to normal, but they were wrong. It didn't return, it transformed. Because after the trial, after the sentences, after Dennis Cole and Reed Simmons were led away in shackles to serve 28 years without the possibility of parole, something irreversible had shifted. The Morgans' driveway, once stained with chalk and blood, had become sacred ground. It wasn't just a place where Lily Morgan had been hurt. It was where a community had decided enough was enough. Where silence died and voices roared. Where a little girl's scream had shaken loose years of quiet compliance. In the days following the sentencing, the street filled not with fear, but with purpose. People brought chalk, stuffed animals, flowers. One morning, Denise opened the front door to find a drawing, a lion, fierce and proud, wearing a crown. No note. Just the image. And that image began to appear everywhere. On garage doors. On mailboxes. On sidewalks. At City Hall. The lion had become the neighborhood's emblem. But Lily? She had already moved on from unicorns. Her latest drawing was right back on that same driveway. A lion, bold and wide-eyed, scar running down the left side of its face. Flames rose behind it, and just beneath its paws were 5 pink words scrawled in capital letters, "No fear, no shame." Mark stood behind her, arms crossed, saying nothing. Denise knelt nearby, tracing the lines with her fingertips. Lily didn't speak as she drew. She was focused, precise. The scar near her eye had faded into a soft crescent now, just barely visible if the light hit it right. But she never hit it. Not once. "Why a lion?" Mark asked softly. Lily shrugged. "Unicorns hide. Lions fight." That was when the mayor called. Again. This time, not just to thank them. He wanted to recognize Lily's courage publicly. "We'd like to declare March 14th as Lily Morgan Day," he said. "To celebrate bravery, community, and the power of one voice." Denise accepted. Not for publicity. For permanence. The city planned a small ceremony. But the turnout was anything but small. Hundreds came. Veterans in dress blues. Teachers from Lily's school. Parents who brought their kids, some of them holding drawings, others holding hands. On the edge of Maple Park, beneath the oak trees near the duck pond, the city unveiled a bench carved from smooth cedar. Etched into the backrest was Lily's original unicorn drawing, restored from a photo taken before the attack. Right beneath it, the phrase Denise had scrawled in chalk now cast in bronze, "No one harms my child," and walks away. The crowd applauded. But Lily's attention was elsewhere. She was already sketching again, sitting cross-legged near the grass, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her arm, drawing another lion with a flaming mane and eyes like sharpened stars. A week later, the letters began arriving. The first was from a girl in Iowa. "Lily, I saw your story. I used to be scared too. But now I'm not. I drew a lion and gave it to my teacher." Another from a boy in Oregon. "I showed my class my burned scar after watching you. I used to hide it. Not anymore." Dozens came. Then hundreds. Denise read every single one aloud at bedtime. Lily listened silently, hugging Mr. Whiskers, then nodded after each. Some were from children. Others were from grown-ups. One letter read, "I wish I had your courage when I was your age." It was signed only, "Still healing, age 52. At a school board meeting the following month, a proposal was made, a new district-wide initiative focused on student safety, awareness, and resistance to coercion. They called it Project Guard, Grow, Understand, Act, Resist, Defend. The board asked Lily to design the logo. She submitted a drawing of a lion cub, standing proud with a tiny badge on its chest and a scar above its eye. Behind it was a child holding chalk like a sword. It was printed on posters, folders, backpacks, even the vests worn by crossing guards. One city council member called it the most effective child-led advocacy image she'd ever seen. But the most unexpected letter didn't come from a child. It came in a plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from a federal prison in Kansas. Inside was a drawing, pencil on scrap paper. A lion, hunched and wounded, kneeling before a girl holding chalk. Underneath it, scribbled handwriting, "I used to pretend to be strong. Uniforms. Threats. I see now I was just afraid. Your girl didn't need to pretend. She had real power. I hope I find that too." It was signed, Jason Myers. Inmate 4731. Denise read it twice before tucking it behind Lily's framed lion drawing in their living room. Later that evening, she asked Lily, "What would you say to him?" Lily thought for a long time, then whispered, "I hope he draws better things now." Meanwhile, the city had begun its own reckoning. An investigation into the misuse of HOA authority revealed more than a dozen unregulated actors who had used similar intimidation tactics under the guise of neighborhood enforcement. The city council voted unanimously to dissolve the HOA system across multiple zones. In its place, they created a citizen-run transparency board. At the reform announcement, a plaque was unveiled bearing the final line of Denise's chalk message, "Real authority protects. Fake authority burns." When asked to speak, Denise declined. But she sent a message, written in chalk across a large slate behind the podium, "Protect the ones who can't fight yet." And the council stood to applaud. A few weeks later, Mark received a call from a group of retired firefighters and veterans. Inspired by Lily's story, they had created a nonprofit called the Line Lily Drew Foundation. Its mission was simple: teach kids how to stand up to intimidation, recognize false authority, and speak up even when afraid. They offered Lily a symbolic scholarship to support any future schooling she chose. On award day, they presented her with a custom backpack. Inside were a full set of pastel chalks, a printed copy of the Bill of Rights, and a stitched gold patch in the shape of a lion's head with the words, "You drew the line." Lily clutched the patch, then quietly attached it to Mr. Whiskers' belly with a safety pin. She never said a word. But her smile said everything. That summer, Lily was invited to lead the opening of the city's new community art wall. The first panel belonged to her. She painted a lion, this time not with chalk, but with acrylic and gold foil. Its mane was filled with hidden messages. One said, "Resist." Another, "Be loud." Across the bottom, signed in lavender, "Lily Morgan, age 8. The panel made the local paper. Front page headline, "Little Girl, Big Roar." And as time passed, something strange and beautiful happened. Lily's story didn't fade. It deepened. Parents used her drawings to talk to their children about courage. Teachers used her video as a case study for civic education. Police departments across 3 counties added false authority identification to their training modules. But perhaps the most enduring mark wasn't the bench or the art wall or the initiative. It was the scar, a soft, pale crescent near Lily's left eye. Not hidden. Not fixed. Just there. Proud. A reminder that some battles leave marks, and that's okay. Because Lily Morgan didn't just survive. She transformed. She turned pain into purpose, silence into strength, and a sidewalk into a revolution. On the anniversary of the incident, Denise found Lily sitting in the driveway again, chalk in hand, Mr. Whiskers beside her, now patched and stitched like a veteran. She was drawing. This time, not a lion. Not a unicorn. Just the word, enough. Mark knelt beside her. Is that for them? Lily shook her head. No. For anyone who thinks they can scare people with fake power. Denise put her hand on Mark's shoulder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Because in that moment, with that single word, drawn in chalk on the same spot, where it all began, they knew the truth. Justice didn't just come through courts or laws or headlines. Sometimes, justice comes in the form of a little girl, a sidewalk, and the courage to pick up the chalk one more time. Some stories stay with you, not because of how they begin, but because of how they change everything by the end. Writing about Lily Morgan's journey has reminded me of something we often forget in today's world. True strength isn't always loud or towering. Sometimes, it's 8 years old, kneeling on a driveway, holding a piece of chalk. This story isn't just about a little girl who was hurt. It's about what happens after, when a family chooses to fight, when a neighborhood refuses to be silent, and when a community turns outrage into reform. Lily's pain sparked a movement, but it was her response, the lion, not the unicorn, that inspired change. She didn't retreat. She redrew the line. And in doing so, she taught an entire city what real courage looks like. So what's the lesson? Never underestimate quiet resistance. Never dismiss the voice of a child. And never allow false authority to go unchallenged. Lily's scar became her strength. Her chalk became her voice. And her story? It became a call to action for all of us. If you're a parent, teach your children that their voice matters. If you're a teacher, remind your students that bravery doesn't always roar, it sometimes whispers, try again. And if you're someone who's ever been afraid to stand up, know this, fear is natural. But silence allows injustice to grow. Speak up. Even if your voice shakes. Especially then. And to those who use fear to control, who pretend to hold power they don't deserve, remember Lily. Because somewhere out there, another little girl with chalk and fire in her eyes is ready to draw the line. To our listeners, thank you, from the bottom of our hearts, for spending your time with us today. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you think, made you angry, or gave you hope, then our mission is working. At U.S. Justice Story, we believe that storytelling isn't just entertainment, it's a tool for awareness, healing, and sometimes, change. Please consider sharing this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever faced injustice, no matter how small, know this, you're not alone. Until next time, stay bold, stay aware, and remember, sometimes, justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes, it holds a piece of chalk.